Hi, welcome to Community and Business. My name is Abbey Finch. I'm owner of Scribespace, a digital marketing company focused on helping small businesses succeed. Each episode, we talk to local small business owners about what drives them, what are the challenges that they face behind the scenes of owning their own business. So this week, our guest is Dr. Suna Qasim of the Center for Advanced Reproductive Medicine and Fertility. They have offices in Cranford, Princeton, and their main office is in Edison, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So they've been in business for quite a while, helping people have babies all over the state of New Jersey. So we're going to talk to Dr. Qasim for a little bit about what it's like being a doctor and being a business owner at the same time. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure.
Of course. Thanks for coming down.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your work background, your education, your history. How you got started?
Sure, certainly. Well, I've been a licensed physician for, about 27 years now, and in private practice in reproductive endocrinology and infertility for about 20. I attended college at Brown University and then subsequently Rutgers Medical School in the UMDNJ system. From there, I did a rotating internship at the University of Pennsylvania Presbyterian Hospital and then completed my residency in obstetrics and gynecology and fellowship training in infertility and reproductive medicine, both in the UMDNJ Robert Wood Johnson systems as well. Like I said, I went into private practice and I've been pretty much there ever since in different locales. Our current practice has been a couple of years into my professional career.
Oh.
Yeah.
What made you choose Rutgers? Are you a New Jersey native or?
Oh yes, I was a New Jersey. I wanted to stay close to home, and
okay.
and I was very thrilled to be accepted. Actually, it was very competitive at the time. The whole
Right.
medical school genre and everything. Yeah, I liked staying close to home. It had a nice reputation. It was one of the better state medical schools in the country at the
Absolutely.
time. Yeah. So I was thrilled to be accepted there.
Okay. So, what made you choose the direction of becoming fertility, OBGYN?
It's very interesting. Like I'd mentioned, after medical school, I actually did a rotating internship to try to explore the different categories of medicine, different careers, and so on and so forth. I really enjoyed obstetrics and gynecology as a medical student, and what I found, interestingly, is that when I finished my internship training, I had done a rotation in almost every major department except OBGYN.
Right.
And afterwards, I realized, boy, I didn't really like any one of those rotations as much as I did the OB rotation in medical school. And particularly, I always found myself drawn to the infertility, the reproductive medicine. I enjoyed the multifaceted aspect of it. You're dealing with, I love women's care. I love dealing with women's care and helping patients conceive and you deal with the surgical aspect, you deal with the anatomy, but you also deal with the patient as a whole with all the different endocrinological and hormonal and medical issues. So you feel like you're bringing it all together for the goal of what God's greatest gift, right? Having a baby.
Right.
So I think that's what drew me, and not finding anything that I enjoyed any more than that, that's where I ended up landing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And at the end of the day, what can be more rewarding than helping people have a baby?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how did you get started in your own private practice?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. As I had mentioned to you before, I was in private practice in a different location as an employee up in Essex County, and I had just taken my board examinations, which I had passed, and I gave a call to one of my old colleagues from the university, Dr. Greg Corsan, and I asked him I wanted to take him out to dinner because he had lent me some materials and things to study, and as a thank you,
Right.
So we went out to dinner, and we were chatting and had a great time, and at the end of the meal, we got up and left, and I turned to him and I said, listen, by the way, Greg, if you're ever thinking of venturing out on your own, I was a little disenchanted with the future of where I was going and where I was going to be. I said, please give me a call. I'll be happy to set something up with you. And he looked at me and he said, I'll keep that in mind, Suna. And sure enough, later, my phone rang a month later.
Oh.
And
He took you up on the offer?
he took me up. Well, he actually asked to take me out to dinner. And as we sat down, the first thing we did, we grabbed the glasses of water and he raised a toast and he said, here's to the future. And the whole dinner was spent discussing our likes. He was tired of the bureaucracy and everything in the universities. And I was mentioning to myself that I was looking to venture out and so on and so forth. And, well, less than a year later, the Center for Advanced Reproductive Medicine Fertility was born. And that's how it all started.
Yeah, the pieces just kind of fell into place, how they were supposed to.
What's that?
The pieces kind of just fell into place how they were supposed to.
Absolutely, yeah. We were looking for a more patient-focused type of center.
Right.
You have the large practices and centers. We wanted to kind of streamline it a little bit better, and thank God, things seem to have worked well.
That's great. And how long have you guys been in business now?
Well, it's been 17 plus years, actually. The first 7 of them, we were in our old office, and then when our third partner, Dr. Rahul Sastov, joined us, we moved into our current setting, which is where we've been ever since for the last 10 plus years. And then over the last 4 or 5 years, we opened up the satellite offices you mentioned, Abby, in Princeton and in Cranford. So a total of 17 plus years. I can't believe it seems like yesterday
Right.
that we were having that meal. I mean, it's
Right.
unbelievable.
Time flies, huh?
Yeah.
I imagine the business has changed quite a bit. I mean, is there more competition now? Is different? I imagine the medicine has changed, technology has changed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the technology is always advancing, especially in what we do in our field. There's
Right.
always new research, new studies, new techniques, protocols, laboratory environment, laboratory settings. In terms of the business aspect of it, absolutely it has. I mean, there's so much more of an emphasis on marketing, especially online, internet. You know, 17 years ago, the internet was not as much of a venue for seeking out a physician, seeking out a practice as it is today. So online presence is something that has really flourished and grown. Back when we first started, many of the practices had a simple, basic website, and now it's expanded into an ongoing, interactional type of website. And yes, competition is always there. I mean, competition in every business is there. But I think if you always keep sight of the goal and focus on the end product that you're trying to offer, then competition is just a routine. But without competition, there's no strive for excellence, I believe. So we've never really been too bothered by that, at the risk of sounding arrogant or presumptive. No, it's
It's a
it
very
has grown.
optimistic view of it. You know,
Yeah,
some people
you
are
know.
scared of other other businesses in their field. But if you look at it as, it's just what being in business is about.
That's the bottom line in any business is coming, in marketing, in products, and in medicine, especially what we do.
Right.
Because what we do is not, patients thankfully are not really sick. They're seeking a successful outcome for something, and they will compare statistics and online reviews and all those things. So you really have to kind of keep up with that.
Right.
And the competition drives you for excellence. I think without it, you kind of fall stagnant into your own being, and you don't have that competition really pushing you to succeed and excel. So
Right, we were just talking about
welcome that.
before how you now have clients or patients can book online. They can book appointments.
Absolutely, sure,
Yeah.
sure. Through
I'm
our
sure-
website and through other venues that we've gotten involved in as well. Absolutely.
So that makes it easier, better patient experience, and that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Seamless, as they say.
Right. We're just trying to be. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Are there some behind the scenes events and tasks that take place as a small business owner that most people don't know about, they wouldn't think about?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think I could best answer that alluding to when we were all employees, like at the university, and a new protocol needed to be done, or new materials needed to be ordered, new technology needed to be instituted. There was always the sit back and say, well, we need to do this and that, and the we fell into this great vast dearth of individuals and then kind of disappeared into the fray. Here, we always joke about it. There is no we. We is me, you, him, her. That's it. We want something done, we have to do it. And the public and the patients may not see that and appreciate that, how much behind-the-scenes work is done, even just simply ordering the furniture, the
supplies,
wallpaper, the
Right.
machinery, the equipment, the products, the catheters, and of course, at the same time, trying to balance and juggle that with what we were set out to do and
Which is-
help our patients and help
Right.
success.
Be a
So,
doctor.
yeah, so again,
Yeah.
it's there is no we.
Right.
It's all me.
It's just you're doing it. You're
That's
doing it.
it,
Sometimes
that's
you have
it.
to play the janitor, and sometimes you're the CEO.
Every hat. Each of us has worn every single hat, and if we
Yeah.
didn't, we wouldn't be able to succeed.
Right.
There's no that's your job, that's your job. I mean, that's
You
part of a
just-
small
You gotta do
business.
what you gotta do.
Absolutely, Abby. Yeah.
So how do you and the other doctors market your business? Like you said, you're increasing your online presence.
Absolutely. I think that's first and foremost. We have a wonderful marketing director, Jackie Burke. She helps us tremendously. I mean, she's on top of all of that. We have a tremendous online presence. Our website is infertilitydocs.com. It's interactive for patients, constantly being updated.
Yeah,
We
I checked it out before we met. There's a lot of information on there, which is really great. People
Yeah.
they want to feel like they're being taken care of. They want to feel like
That's-
you guys know what you're talking about and you actually care.
Well, that's the bottom line. I mean, I think, if you combine those two, empathy and knowledge, then that's the key to success. Like I said, there's also a new venue we've just enrolled in, ZocDoc, which is an online booking type of thing. I mean, again, everything to make the patient's life easier. We never forget about the classic, visiting the doctors. We take it upon ourselves as physicians to visit the doctors and have, peer-to-peer educational sessions and promotional sessions. I think it shows them the respect. They know that they can count on us, call on us for anything that they need. And of course, we're also in local print, newspapers and advertising and so on and so forth. And, that'll continue to grow as new venues appear and corporate events and so on and so forth. We have to keep up with that.
Right.
That's the status quo for today's business,
Yeah, it is competitive.
Sure,
and you kind of have to
sure.
put a little bit of work into each avenue.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there anything you're afraid of as a business owner? Anything holding you back? Or at this point, do you feel pretty comfortable?
I think we're comfortable with what we do, but there is one thing I'm afraid of, and that is what goes against what compelled me to work for myself, and that's loss of autonomy. If you keep the goal in mind, business, practice, medical, they all stem from the tip of the pyramid, and that is patient care, patient focus. Honestly, we always keep that in front of us, that it's the patient that comes first, and from that stems all the other items. But when there arise obstacles and roadblocks and elements outside of our control that prevent us from guiding that patient down the right path, that doesn't allow us to have her pursue her dream in the appropriate fashion based on her data, her testing.
Okay.
So it creates a roadblock, an obstacle, and we lose our autonomy, we lose our ability to treat that patient.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing I fear, that as more restrictions from governing agencies, insurance companies, so on and so forth. I'm certainly not bashing any of them in no way, shape, or form. They have their policies and so on and so forth. But when you've done all this testing work, assessment, empathy, care, okay, we've come to, this is where we're going to go. And then suddenly, oh no, we can't do it.
It's completely out of your control.
Out of your hands. It's out of your control, and you've lost your autonomy. You've lost your ability to do what you love best, take care of that patient the best way you can. That's what I fear, Abby, and I do fear it. I do fear it because
I imagine it happens. Does it happen more frequently nowadays, or is it depends on the patient?
To some extent,
situation?
it depends on the patient, her situation, her scenario, her backing, her insurance coverage. All those factors come into play. See, we have to eliminate. I always tell patients, I can't be your financial analyst. I can't be I can only be the best doctor for you I can.
Right.
But then the other chips have to fall into place, and I have no control over those other chips, and that's what I fear, that if that's going to stop me from giving the best care I can, then how am I going to succeed for you or you or you,
Right, on an individual level,
Exactly. And believe me, that's the only thing I fear. That's it. That's the only thing I fear.
Well, that's great,
Yeah.
I mean...
I have to be honest about it.
Right, yeah.
And
I imagine there's some sort of challenges that you have to overcome. I mean, things that are in your control that you can...
They are. And you know what? I thought about this. I think the biggest challenging is debunking some of the myths or some of the preconceived notions that the patients have. Again, it all stems from the patient. I'm never concerned about challenges of, are we going to get this new instrument or these new catheters?
Right.
I just, when the caring relative or the non-specialized family physician's neighbor tells you that this is the way to do, and the patient comes in with that preconceived notion, being empathetic, sympathetic, and caring, you have to kind of diffuse that as gently as possible. And I think that's the single biggest challenge.
Right, you kind of have to rip the Band-Aid off.
Exactly, letting the patient know that you're their guide, we're working in this together. I mean, I think that's the one that I always look at as the biggest one.
Oh, well, thank you. We're going to take a little break, but we'll be back in a few minutes.
Local government, local educational institutions, and local community members all use cable access TV to communicate their message. They depend upon it as an affordable means of outreach. Public educational and government access television empowers local government agencies, individuals, and groups to use the media to speak directly to their constituents in a more direct and cost-effective way. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Abbey Finch here with Dr. Suna Qasim. We're talking about his role as a fertility doctor and his role as a business owner. And on this half of the show, we're going to talk a little bit more about patient care, dealing with patients, the ups and downs of working one-on-one with individuals who are overcoming some pretty big challenges in their life.
Certainly.
Which you can imagine is very emotional for you, for them, for their partners, their families. And we'll start off with a tough one. What happens when you have to tell them the IVF didn't work, or their treatment didn't work?
Yeah, that's a big challenge for anybody to talk to a patient about that. But I always look at it this way, Abby. My favorite expression is maybe cliche, but I use it all the time. I just used it the other day with a patient as well. It's that, especially in what we do, I love to tell them that with every door that closes, another one opens. There's no way around it. It's a law of energy, inertia, call it what you may, that even though this particular treatment did not work, especially when it's IVF, because patients see that as that's the last step. If that doesn't work, oh my gosh, there's nothing else. But I make it very clear to them that this is not the end all. We may have to do just some minor changes, try again, maybe change the protocol. The fact that they are undergoing IVF, in and of itself, I let them believe and know from the bottom of my heart and from their testing that means that they have a good prognosis for success. I would not encourage them or lead them along that path if I didn't think it had a good prognosis. And now IVF is still, be it as it may, along the path of fertility care. That if, God forbid, it doesn't work after one, too many attempts, then there are always other options. As long as they know that this is not the end all, that, okay, we're on top of this, we're not gonna let it control us. Remember, we spoke about this. If it doesn't work out, we'll try to change the protocol. Always spin it as the glass half full.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the best way to approach it, that this is not the end all, this is not a dead end. You stay on top of your management, you control it, don't let it control you. We've had a bump in the road, we're gonna overcome it, try the next step. Remember, we spoke about this other option if it doesn't work. Keep them optimistic, upbeat. Truthfully, you never, ever mislead a patient. But if they have the right notions, the right prognosis in mind, and the right expectations, it's not as difficult as you may believe it to be, really.
Right, right. It's also cliche, but I always believe, everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
Everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to.
That's
if you can look at it that way.
Absolutely. Very good.
I actually had a friend who recently, it was her second time doing IVF, and she ended up getting pregnant. She's 3 months pregnant.
There you have it.
It was
case in point, right?
Exactly. She was feeling the first time it didn't take, and so she was feeling really downtrodden about it.
Of course.
And the second time
It's
she
tough.
was
It's hard.
a little shocked almost,
Yeah.
So
That's true.
there's always that light at the end of the tunnel for sure.
Absolutely, and that's the key, Abby. That's the key. That keep that light in front of them. Don't ever let it get behind them. You keep it in front of them, they know they can approach it and get it. That's the key. And you have to guide them appropriately. You can't just let them keep doing the same treatment that's not working. I mean, that's also important.
So when it comes to delivering good news, do you have any good patient stories that were particularly close to your heart? Or?
Thankfully, there are so many, that you can think of. But there were two that came into mind. There was one patient in particular. I remember I saw her many years ago. She was at another center, and they did some testing and found that her egg quality was extremely suboptimal. I mean, they didn't give her much of a prognosis. They let her try some basic treatments, and when she asked to do IVF, they wouldn't permit her to do it. They told her not. And in no way am I putting them, I mean, this may have been their policy, whatever, so she was seeking a second opinion. She came to us, and I looked at her testing, and I concurred with the diagnosis, but I said, I think of a 31-year-old woman, I don't exactly remember how, or should I say 31-year young woman, how can I withhold this trial from her? She'll never be happy and content. Give it a try. So we tried, we used an aggressive protocol. It took a while, but ultimately we retrieved the eggs. We had 1 or 2 embryos. We transferred them, and beautiful baby boy.
Oh.
And I'll tell you, every year at the holidays, she comes in with this growing, handsome boy. I don't know, he's 5, 6 years old now, bringing trays of sweets and cookies. And I mean, you could just see the appreciation and the love and for her child and the letter that she wrote me. I mean, it's just heartwarming. To make an impact in her life was just so incredible when she felt like the door was closed in front of her,
Right.
The other particular patient takes a different turn. It stemmed from a tragedy. It was a patient who was a little bit chronologically older, in her late 40s. They had lost a son. And they came to us the husband told me, we want to replace our son. So we did some testing, and clearly she needed an egg donor. I mean, she was menopausal,
Right.
And she accepted it, and she did it. Well, wouldn't you know, a year later, she delivered a baby boy. came back a year after that to transfer some of her frozen embryos and had twins.
Oh,
In the span of 3 years, she had 3 baby boys. And I tell you, the reason that remains to me is when I think of, especially the husband, how downtrodden he looked. The first time I saw him, his face was burned. He said, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. And then shift forward 3 years later, see him carrying his baby and the joy. Now, they'll never forget the tragedy, of course, but to help them, they brought new life and new regeneration.
New meaning.
This impact in these people's lives is, I think, what really keeps us going. And for some reason, those 2 stories stick out in our mind. One, probably because of, the weight we gain every time around the holidays. And the other one, just
physical
oh my gosh, But this couple, what they went through, and to help them get to this point, you really feel the impact that you've made in their lives. And they stand out in my mind to this day.
That's fantastic. I actually got chills
Oh,
when you were talking about
It's
that.
incredible. I do every time I
That's
think about it
beautiful.
myself. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. So do you have to deal, though, with patients around the clock? Are there people paging you, calling you all the time? I mean, is it the kind of thing that you can ever turn off from? Or is it a
you
24-hour
cannot.
job?
Yeah, you're always attached to your pager, your beeper, whatever it may be. But thankfully, given we have generally young, healthy couples that are undergoing treatments and protocols, and there's very few emergencies, I'm happy to say. Of course, we'll get the patient panicking at 11:30 at night. She's supposed to take her shot, and she doesn't think it all went in, or that she's had some bleeding, or, I don't have my medicine, can we call the local pharmacy? Those are frankly few and far between, thankfully. So I have to say we do, but not as frequently as perhaps a primary care physician
Right.
with all symptoms. And it's more structured in that way. I think that's one of the appealing things about it, is that you can really, if you educate the patient and they go through all their steps and everything, the calls in those late night hours are few and far between because there are so few emergencies, thankfully.
Right,
so.
right.
But
So
we
it's not
do.
needed.
We do.
Yeah.
We still have to,
Right.
I mean, that's part of what we do.
That's part of being in the field. But that's great that, you're able to
Yeah.
educate patients enough so they can kind of, go
Well,
off on their own
the
for a
thanks,
little bit and
absolutely, and
come back
thanks
in the
go,
office when they
absolutely,
need
and
to.
thanks go to our nursing staff for that, as well as
Right.
they educate and prepare the patients so that they're comfortable and they're confident in what they're doing. So
And what's the most rewarding part of being a doctor? I guess you've kind of already answered. Is it giving people a new life?
You know what? The most rewarding is absolutely when they bring the babies in.
Yeah.
When you think of having seen that patient initially and all the testing and treatments and the multitude of discussions and consultations, and then blink your eyes and fast forward a year and there's this beautiful
And then
baby in
the
their
baby.
hands. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable.
Makes it worth
I
it,
still
huh?
get a thrill. I still get a thrill every time they do that. That is by far, that single episode validates everything you do. I mean, that makes you so happy and joy. The whole staff is gawking over this beautiful child and taking pictures and everything, and you could see the joy that they have. When you discharge them, I always say fertility is a thankless job. Our success means that we send our patients away
Right. We don't see
to their
anybody.
obstetricians, right?
Right.
But when they come back with the baby, I mean, oh my gosh, that's
Yes.
I think that really is the key. That's the ultimate.
And it's sort of a unique event because most people, when they have a baby, it's between 2 people, but in this case, it's a whole staff of people that helped.
Yeah.
bring the
Well, we
baby
tell them
home.
all, you're now part of our extended family.
Right.
And they feel that, and they always come in, and
They feel like
yeah,
it.
that's wonderful. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
So are there big challenges that you have to face as far as dealing with patients, or have you had to deal with difficult patients? Have you had to deal with people who, blamed you for something going wrong that wasn't your fault, or?
Yeah, that's inherent to the field, Abby. I mean, I think frustration stems from failure, and if the patient doesn't succeed, she feels like she's failed, and it's human nature to try to find flaws in the system and blame, I didn't get the right medicine, I didn't get the right protocol. And I think, again, if we go back to the very first premise that I mentioned, keep patient care in mind. Think, if that was my sister sitting there, or my cousin, or even my wife sitting there, how would I feel? How would she feel? And if you empathize with that and understand that, then really the challenges are from within. How do you deal with that? How do you openly, honestly, and empathetically convey to a patient that you've done everything you can,
Right.
and that they've done everything they can, and that, as I mentioned, the door is not shut. Let's talk about the next step. Now, they may not be willing to move on to the next step, but if you have, in your heart and soul, done everything that's appropriate, and you convey that, then the challenges tend to fall by the wayside. I mean, other than what I mentioned before, debunking myths and some of the obstacles that are outside of the realm of our power to control, we tackle every challenge head on. I I don't think we ever look at anything as an unattainable challenge that frightens us.
Right.
Rather, we get excited. We look forward to it. We look forward to helping it
Solving a
become
puzzle.
overcome. Exactly. That's, I think, a great way to put it. And, short of that, it's just be open, honest, communicate openly, honestly, like you would to your own family member. And generally, those challenges fall by the wayside, as I mentioned before.
So just out of curiosity, what are some of the myths that people come in when it comes to fertility?
I'll tell you, some of the biggest myths are, well, you get your cycle every month and you're healthy, so you must be fertile. Don't worry about it. Never mind that you may be 41 years old or 42 years old. Well, you've had 2 children before. I mean, why do you have to do any treatment? Just keep trying. Well, your children are 9 and 11 years old. This is a different era in your life. Being healthy is obviously critical for everything in our lives. But sadly enough, the eggs live in their own world.
Right.
And just because an individual is healthy and doesn't partake in any unnatural habits does not mean that her eggs are as fertile as we would hope them to be.
Right.
See, that's, I think, a big myth. Or,
big block for
my
people.
friend took some pills and did this and did that. Can I try those pills? Well, those pills aren't really appropriate for your particular condition. So, and you have to say it in a way that you're their guide, you're their colleague. You never want to be combative.
Right.
Because then you've
Maybe you
lost the
don't put
patient.
them down or make them feel
You
silly
have
or-
lost the patient
Yeah.
right at moment 1. So as long as you try to convey that empathetic, well, that may have worked for her, but for your case, I think this would be more appropriate. That's all it is. Some of the, and people are doing it out of good nature and out of
Right.
trying to help them. So you don't want, they're wrong.
Right.
Well,
Your sister's an idiot.
yeah, and you're insulting their own spouse or their own mother.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't look too good.
Not at all.
So that's what I mean by those. I mean,
Yeah.
that they do come in with those, and you just have to kind of gently diffuse them and move forward in the way that you see is fit for them.
Yeah, get them back on track.
That's it. Yeah.
So when you go home at night, do you get emotionally affected by the results of your patients? Or
You cannot be a successful fertility doctor if you don't. If I can answer that question, no, I don't think that we would have been where we are. You can't help but getting emotionally affected. Absolutely you do. It's just inherent to it. If you care, you're going to get emotional about the outcome. And maybe sometimes to a fault, but that's part of what we do.
So do you ever find yourself having to play different roles, like having to play therapist and fertility doctor? Because people are coming in, I imagine, very emotionally charged, feeling frustrated or angry, or they've been trying to get pregnant for a while, or they've been told they can't get pregnant. So do you find yourself having to, sort of play those
Absolutely.
kind of roles?
Absolutely. You have to be their doctor. You have to be their, to some degree, their counselor, their therapist. You have to be their organizer. Okay,
Right.
next week we're going to start this treatment. Then we're going to do this procedure.
Right.
And then, okay, so are you free next week? Let's pick a day. I mean, really, you have to wear multiple hats. Because remember, fertility is the one field where you're treating 2 people at the same time.
Right.
And it's time sensitive. You can't just do a procedure on this day just because it's convenient.
Right.
So, yeah,
So
you
at a
have to
certain
wear.
point in the cycle, yeah.
Absolutely. Counselor, empathy, smart, diagnostically, and then, of course, physically in terms of what they need, and then organizationally.
Right.
You have to carry all those hats at all times to be successful. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I learned a lot. And
Oh, my pleasure.
It's really a pleasure to have someone who's so passionate about what they do.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.